So then, people, I'm going to be honest. Where have I been? I've been playing Astrobot non-stop. Astrobot, PlayStation 5. If you've not played it already, check it out. Because it's awesome. It's so awesome. And speaking of things that are awesome, 5 years. Where has the time gone? Hello and welcome to FTTR. I am Hugh McQuaid, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We are doing a 5-year anniversary celebration of AEW DYNAMITE, as it is their 5-year anniversary show on Wednesday, and I wanted to get my thoughts out there on this half a decade of AEW content that we've had, my overall feelings, a few personal anecdotes and stuff like that, and how I think that AEW has really changed the industry for the better. But before we dive into that, please subscribe, please like this video, please comment your thoughts down below, and I'll try to reply to every single one of them as we dive into this. So AEW DYNAMITE. I remember distinctly where I was when I watched that first episode. The first episode, I believe I was at my partner's dad's house. Yes. And they've got a pretty big TV, bigger than the one I had at the time. And yeah, I made them watch the first episode of AEW because this was 2019. So I sort of really got back into wrestling in 2017. But this was the style of wrestling that I gravitated towards. I was so intrigued to see guys like Kenny Omega, Mox, Bucks, all these people sort of come together and do this anti-WWE thing. They were creating an alternative. And I thought that was really, really interesting. The style of wrestling was very much geared towards me. It's the style of wrestling that I love. And that first episode of AEW, it just hit, man. Like, I think we are, as a wrestling fans, as a community, I think people are trying to undermine how good the first, 3 years of AEW were. Not that AEW now is not good, I think it really, really is. But those first 3 years were incredible. Like, there's so much stuff that I can just pluck off the top of my head that I'm like, that was awesome, that was awesome, that was awesome, that was awesome. And it started with the first episode, with the big brawl at the end, where you've got the Inner Circle versus the Elite, you've got Mox coming down, you've got the debut of Jake Hager. It all just felt so cool and organic and new, and it just looked cool, it looked different. And I think that's why a lot of people grasped onto it, because the product at the time that the alternative was offering was a piece of dog shit. It was so bad. And this was it felt game-changing. It really felt game-changing, leading through to stuff like seeing a lights-out match on TV and pay-per-view, and the way they promoted different stipulations, the 30-minute Iron Man match on TV with Pac and Omega. That block was so awesome. And the way that I it seems weird, I don't divvy up AEW by year. I divvy it up by champion, because there's not been that many. I can distinctly realise, okay, we're in the Jericho era, we're in the Mox era, we're in the Kenny era, we're in the Hangman era. I can do that. That's the way I sequentially view AEW, and that's how I'm going to talk about it, because the Jericho era was really, really fun. I may not like Jericho now, but back then, Le Champion was my favourite thing in the world. Le Champion was so funny. The skit, particularly talking about highlights, the skit that Jericho did mocking Cody's promo at home, where he's got the Inner Circle doing the dishes and stuff like that. That was so funny. Incredibly funny. You had Cody's promo to Jericho. The Jericho feud with Cody was so unbelievably good. And it was peppered in there with other stuff. Obviously, the bubbling away Mox and Kenny stuff. Darby, the Four Pillars sort of establishing themselves. Hangman Page starting out. There was a lot of stuff. Not all great. Nightmare Collective and stuff like that. But But overall, that was just like that. I remember that Jericho era so good. And then you hit pandemic era with Mox as champ. Now Mox, like, I will outright say Mox is not my favourite wrestler in the world. He's absolutely not. But in terms of carrying a company on your back through a pandemic, like AEW, for one, I'm going to take that back. Because I don't think Mox carried AEW through the pandemic. I really don't. I think AEW was the best wrestling product that was happening at the time of the pandemic. Like, hands down. I think it was just flawless. Like, flawless. In terms of finding your rhythm and finding what you can do with no fans in attendance, I thought AEW nailed it. And Jon Moxley as champion was the sort of chef's kiss, the cherry on top of that, because I think his run is diminished by the pandemic. Whereas you look at the matches that he had and the feuds that he had, I loved his feud with Brody Lee. I loved his match with Brody Lee. I loved his feud with MJF. I loved his feud with Eddie Kingston. There was so much good stuff in Mox's run that I think it does get undermined, unfortunately. And that sort of block of television where you had Stadium Stampede, which is one of my favourite matches of all time. Like, I can't tell you how happy Stadium Stampede made me. It was so unbelievably fun. You had debuts like Brody Lee, Matt Hardy, and I think Brody Lee, just incredible. Taken Too Soon. I loved the Mr. Brody Lee stuff. I was so unbelievably excited when he came to AEW. I loved what he was doing with the Dark Order. I loved his match with Cody. Unbelievable. Loved his match with Mox, of course. And yeah, that pandemic run. Oh, as well, I want to shout out a moment that no one talks about in terms of the pandemic. And that is the TNT Championship match between Darby Allin and Miro. Maybe my top 3 AEW moments of all time. It is when Darby has just been battered beyond belief by Miro. Miro is dominating. Darby's in the corner. He's got Sting next to him. And they just do the fist bump. Darby goes full pelt after Miro. It's like, okay, we know we can't win this, but we got to try. That is, honest to God, I just got chills thinking about it. That is one of my favourite moments in pro wrestling and one of my favourite moments in Dynamite history as well. And yeah, the pandemic stuff, I haven't even talked about the Hangman stuff. Like Hangman and Kenny, their tag title run, the amazing match at Revolution, debut of FTR. So much happened in the pandemic, and it's just, it was so great at the time. Like, it was unbelievably good. And that was sort of Mox's era. Mox's era as champ was in, like, the pandemic. That's his defining run. And I think it sadly gets swept under the rug because of that. I think it was such an incredible run. And in terms of my fandom for AEW, it really helped out. In a time when the world had shut down and, like, nothing was going on, you had pro wrestling somehow continuing in AEW, just putting a smile on my face every week. Like, it was amazing. It was really cool stuff. Then you had the run of the cleaner Kenny Omega. Now, my opinion, Kenny Omega is the best AEW World Champion. He has had the best run. I wholeheartedly believe that in terms of story, in terms of matches. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And this was like the best time to be a pro wrestling fan, because this was when AEW sort of fans came back and we had the influx. We had Bryan, we had Punk, we had Cole. My God, it was awesome. This was like an incredible time to be a pro wrestling fan, and it leads me into my favourite feud in AEW history, and that is Punk MJF. As much as Punk is a controversial figure in terms of AEW, I don't think we can undersell just how pivotal and how well he told stories in AEW, because the MJF feud, the Eddie Kingston feud, the Darby feud, to an extent the Hangman feud, like, it was incredible. It was so good. Like, that run of Punk from him debuting to winning the title, like, that is one of my favourite runs in pro wrestling. Like, I absolutely loved it, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'm not the massive Punk fan, but my God, that run was incredible, and it was incredible storytelling. MJF, let's talk about MJF for a minute. In terms of people I didn't know, I saw a glimpse of MJF on a show called Dojo Pro, which had a really cool concept. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It was really, really cool. But that was the first time I got exposed to MJF, and seeing MJF on a big stage cutting these sort of crossing the line promos was, as someone who, you know, I grew up at a certain time. That makes me feel old, but I did grow up at a certain time where stuff like The In-Betweeners was my favourite type of humour, and that is just ripping someone to shreds. My God, this was funny. It was just beautiful stuff. The promo between him and Punk, I watch probably like once a month because it just gets me. It's so unbelievably good. And MJF carried that through. Like, he has just been I want to say pioneer, but he's really helped AEW just in terms of storytelling. Like, his storylines are so unbelievably good, and yeah, I've just loved everything that MJF's done in AEW. Even the Devil's storyline. I was a fan of the Devil storyline, but yeah, that was peak stuff. That was sort of a crossover because we did also then have Hangman winning the title and Hangman going into his feud with Punk. Then we had the Punk stuff, the Mox stuff, just that section there with Punk and Mox, and then MJF eventually winning it back. Winning it for the first time. That was a little bit messy. That was a little bit like not the best stuff, but up until then, AEW was like peak pro wrestling. It was everything that I wanted out of pro wrestling. And as much as people like try and dog on this time, you got to think about what AEW gave to us that we hadn't seen before. Forbidden Door, for crying out loud. A stadium show selling 80,000 tickets that isn't called WWE. Like, they broke barriers that I don't think we were expecting to be broken in pro wrestling. Having the first Forbidden Door show and then doing Wembley Stadium. I don't think when they announced Wembley Stadium, anyone, even myself, there's probably like video evidence of me saying this somewhere on my channel because I was covering it at the time. But it was just, no one thought they could do it. No one thought they could fill that many seats. And the first All In is one of the most special weekends and special experiences that I've had in my life, like, at all. It's just God tier. It was absolute God tier, and I don't think it'll ever be matched. It was so special doing the double header of the Progress and the Defy show the day before, and then doing All In was just unbelievable. And sharing that with my partner was really, really fun. Really, really fun. So I think we have to talk about my partner as well. She's not been seen on camera, but I feel like I have to speak to her about this because I don't need to speak to her about doing this. I just want to speak about how AEW has infected her as well, because in terms of pro wrestling, she's not a big pro wrestling fan. She's not. She has to deal with me buying all this stuff and doing all these videos. But when AEW started, like, she's got her people that she's into. She, like, follows a little bit, but in terms of AEW, she actually did, whether it was because of the pandemic, she actually did used to follow the stories as well. She was very intrigued with the sort of Cody's first arc, going for Jericho and stuff like that. She was intrigued with Hangman and Omega. She thought that was really good. She really loves Darby. She loves Will Ospreay. Now he's come in. Like, she has not actively followed it, but she will ask me now and then what's going on if she's not watching it, and ask me questions while I'm watching it, which is more than can be said for other promotions. Like, I think this AEW, she really got on board with the storytelling, the long-term storytelling that they were doing, and Hangman in particular, his slow descent. Like, that was what she really enjoyed. We watched Stadium Stampede together and she absolutely loved it. So yeah, I've got some very special memories shared with my partner regarding AEW. Like, all in again. There's so many. So then I think we'll do this like final chunk where we have like MJF, we have Joe, we have Swerve, and now we have Danielson. We have that big chunk where I feel like, and I've heard, I can't remember who said this, I feel like it was maybe Michael Sidgwick from What Culture Wrestling. I feel like he said this about AEW at this time, and that is with the product that AEW were putting on, they shouldn't be as cold as they are, because I think the product that they are putting on is fantastic. I think it's been so unbelievably good since Joe won the belt. When MJF had the belt, it was a little bit hit and miss. People didn't like the Devil storyline. I love babyface MJF better than you, baby. I was wholeheartedly into that. I was so into that. But since Joe won the belt, then to Swerve, then to Danielson, I think this has just been stellar. Like really, really stellar stuff. I think it's been my favourite pro wrestling to watch in terms of weekly TV. Like, I just get such a kick out of it because I feel like I want to watch pro wrestling for pro wrestling. And I feel like AEW hits that balance. I don't think it's too wrestling heavy. I think they know where their strength is, and that is pro wrestling. Because, of course, if you've got Will Ospreay and Rey Fenix, why would you not just have them have a match? If you've got Will Ospreay versus Ricochet, let's just have a match. MJF versus Kenny Omega, yeah, let's do that. Like, there's so many combinations that I feel like it just gets dogged on because it puts on wrestling matches and doesn't tell a story. But they do tell a story. The story is told in the ring. Like, that's a way to tell a story. We don't need 20-minute promos. They can enhance the experience, but for me, the in-ring work for AEW is what really draws me in, and the fact that they can tell incredibly compelling stories through in-ring work, that's one of the reasons I love it. Like, that's special to me. That's the best kind of pro wrestling. That's why I love indie wrestling, because that's what they do as well. They don't get a lot of time for huge promos. They don't get a lot of time for big showy entrances or anything like that. You get a pro wrestling match, and you have to tell the story through that. That's why I like Japan. That's why I like Noah, New Japan. And I think they've got it down to a T. AEW, in terms of in-ring storytelling and in-ring work, they are probably the best promotion on the planet. Like, you cannot deny that. They put on 5-star bangers near enough every week, and people complain about that. They do. For some reason, people complain we get 5-star bangers every week. I'm not one of them people. But yeah, that sort of caps that off. Overall, my overall thoughts of AEW Dynamite and its 5-year run, it's been incredibly special. Because I think the thing that, like, with regular TV, you get those breaks. You get the breaks of waiting 2 years to watch The Last of Us Season 2. You get the 1.5 breaks to watch a new series of Doctor Who. You have 8 episodes, boom, 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 and it's done. With pro wrestling, you have to be interesting every week. And AEW, to me, has always been that. It's always been interesting. I've always cared about what's going on. And I think in terms of 5 years, it's been a fudging hell of a ride, hasn't it? It's been so fun with the controversies, everything. I think down to its core, AEW knows what it is right now, knows what it needs to be, and I think they're going to succeed because of it. Because we're 5 years down the line, guys. Like, I think we're in safe hands. And yeah, AEW, insanely special to me. I want to know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Are you a fan? Are you not? Let me know, and I'll try and apply to every single one of them. Thank you all ever so much for your support, and have a nice day.